Gut feelings are not always good in coaching. A lot of coaches say that they coach from their intuition or their gut in sessions, but sometimes what we are calling intuition is actually unexamined bias, emotion, or projection. And showing up unprepared to a coaching call and just mislabeling it as trusting your gut is not coaching. It's sharing, and it's not always helpful. And I know today's episode is going to piss some people off, and I'm okay with that because I do believe this is important to consider in your coaching. And in today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down what projection is, which is a theme that is really common in the world of psychology and therapy. And we're going to talk about why it happens, even when it's not done intentionally or maliciously, what it looks like, and what to do instead. Today might feel a little uncomfortable for some of you because you might feel a little bit of a sting, as if I'm calling you out on some potential blind spots that you have. But the truth is that is the only way that we can grow. And if you listen to this podcast, I know you want to be a great coach, and that's what we are here to do. And sometimes that includes uncomfortable topics like projection. So here's what projection looks like when it shows up, particularly in a coaching container. This usually happens when the coach themselves unconsciously assigns their own beliefs, their fears, their unmet needs, or their emotional baggage onto the client, instead of seeing the client clearly as they are without that biased lens. Imagine wearing dirty glasses. That's the best analogy I can give you. It's that when they're not clean because of our experiences, our pain points, our own personal struggles, we don't see things clearly, but instead we see them through that dirtied lens, and it influences what we perceive and therefore what we share and what we say. And this is what it actually might look or sound like in a coaching container. I have a couple examples for you guys. The first one is over-identifying with the client. This is really common, and it usually happens especially if you are working with clients who are experiencing what you have experienced in the past, or you may be currently working through. It's one of the reasons couples therapy is not my favorite form of therapy, because it is just a little too close to home for me, and it's something that I really struggle managing my own reactions towards when I see partners engaging in behaviors that I have experienced and were really difficult to overcome in my own personal life. So over-identifying with the client is one of the ways you might see it show up in a coaching container. Another way is overreacting to certain client behaviors or particular topics. We're going to talk more about this in a second, but just keep that in the back of your mind. And then another way is pushing advice that is more about your experience as the coach than the client's needs. And usually this is what I like to call one of those shadow sides of caring, which I have an entire episode on. I'll link in the show notes. It's one of our most viewed and popular episodes because it is something that happens all the time. Okay. And the fourth one is being overly invested into a specific outcome because of what that might mean about you as the coach. So let me repeat what this might look like. We have over-identifying with the client. We have overreacting to the client, pushing advice, and becoming overly invested in a specific outcome. Now, I know that this doesn't happen on purpose, but why does it happen? Let's talk about that for a second. And the simple answer is that coaches are human. Okay, just because you're a coach doesn't mean you're immune to being human and having a brain. We all carry our own shit on the coaching calls. That's going to happen, such as unprocessed trauma, emotional wounds, biases, assumptions, and unmet needs, as well as insecurities, particularly around performance or likability or value or results. And without awareness around those things, this can seep into coaching sessions, especially when you're under pressure. Let's say you're working with a very popular client or a high stakes client. You might have this fear of not being good enough or not being able to get them a result, and it brings up things within you. And if this still isn't making sense and you're still kind of confused about what I'm talking about today, or it feels a little wonky and you're wondering, is this me? I'm going to walk through 5 specific ways that I've seen projections show up in coaching, whether that be in my own coaching, being in coaching containers and watching it happen in real time with colleagues through supervision, as well as inside of the Art and Skill of Coaching, my coach training program. We do coaching audits, and I watch people's sessions and I see it show up there, and I've seen it happen in 5 different, very distinct ways. And I'm going to break each down today, starting with the fixer. So the fixer is if you notice your client is struggling or feeling stuck, and instead of holding space and being patient and trusting the process and maybe asking a powerful question, you tend to want to solve the problem and jump in with a solution right away. you might be a fixer. What do I mean by that? Well, again, it's when you start problem solving for the client because you're uncomfortable with the discomfort. You're uncomfortable with the uncertainty. You're uncomfortable with the anxiety. And what that might sound like is, here's what I think you should do. Or let's map out a plan right now. Or wow, that sounds really tough. How can we make you feel better in this moment? And again, it's not malicious. This is why it happens. You might be unconsciously rescuing your client because their pain reminds you of yours, or because you feel responsible for fixing their problem. And I talk about this inside of the Art and Skill of Coaching all the time. Our job is to support, not solve, right? We are coaches, not martyrs. And I know it's not malicious or ill-intentioned, but it is an issue because it will disempower your client and it short circuits their growth process. And that's not fair to someone paying you to coach them. So that's the fixer. Here's the second of 5 ways that I've seen projection show up in coaching containers, and it's what I like to call the blueprint coach. So this is when you yourself as the coach have overcome something big in your life, right? And you use coaching or personal development to do it. And now you see your clients going through something similar. And so you assume that what worked for you will work for them. And you start directing them down the same path. And so what this sounds like is, oh my gosh, you have to follow this Instagram account, or this book changed everything for me, you have to read it. Or here's the exact system I used to get results, why don't you try that? And I know you want to be helpful. That's probably why you're doing it, because you quote unquote have the answers, or you want to share what worked for you. But you are unknowingly coaching yourself instead of them. And you're trying to get the client to the next stage in your journey, then the next stage in theirs. Remember, your job is to coach your client to their next level, not yours. And when you engage with them in this way, even unintentionally, it causes you to miss their unique needs, their unique values, their level of readiness, and really intervene in an appropriate, individualized way so that the coaching stays personalized versus prescriptive. Okay, so that's the blueprint coach. Then we have the triggered coach, and this happens more often than we might like to admit. And so, for example, let's say your client reschedules on you, or they show up late, or they're still not quote unquote doing the work or doing the homework, or they're resistant, and you're getting frustrated, you're getting irritated, and maybe you're even feeling disappointed or defeated or doubtful because they're not getting the result or the outcome that you want or need them to get. And it leaks out in your tone. It leaks out in your comments. It comes across in your questions as judgmental. And you think you're holding them accountable, but again, it comes off as judgmental. So maybe it sounds something like, you say this is important to you, but your actions don't show it. That is not a bad coaching probe. But when the intention is coming from judgment and from you projecting being triggered versus true accountability and building discrepancy and discomfort to move them forward, you're doing the client a disservice. And there is a reason this happens, just like the other forms of projection. It's usually because that client's behavior is activating something unresolved within you. And often it's tied to something unique to you, a value, a work ethic, a fear, etc. So this is your work to do behind the scenes to understand what does trigger you and how can you identify it and work through it versus projecting it onto your client. Because it is an issue if it happens, okay? The clients will feel it. You don't have to say, hey, I'm judging you, for the client to know that you are. And what ends up happening is you'll lose neutrality and the session will become about your standards versus the client's process. So that's the triggered coach. Let's talk about the 4th type of projection I've seen inside of coaching containers, and we're going to label this individual as the overachiever. So let's say your client isn't getting results yet, and you start spiraling as a result, and you start getting into doubt and defeat and confusion and start wondering if you as the coach are failing because your client isn't getting results. And so what you do is you try to fix it by over-preparing, over-giving, over-coaching, over-compensating. So you'll say something like, well, let's just stay on for an extra half hour, or let's add a bonus session, or I made a whole workbook for you, I'll just send it to you for free. You're trying to fix the issue because you've tied your worth to their success. And you need them to achieve this goal. You need them to get results. You need them to win so that you can feel good as a coach. And I have seen this one so much. And to be honest, early on in my coaching journey, this was me. This is the one I struggled with. It's okay. It happens a lot, especially with newer coaches who might not have proof of concept yet. They might not have confidence in their process because they haven't had a lot of clients get results through their process yet. And so they become outcome dependent. And your energy shifts from holding space to needing validation from the client's accomplishments. And this is obviously not good. So that's the overachiever. And this leads me to the last way that I see projection go down in a coaching container. And this is what I like to call the people pleaser. So here is where you hesitate to challenge your client. You won't set a boundary. You will not hold them accountable. You will not evaluate that thought. You will not reflect something difficult because you don't want them to feel uncomfortable. You don't want them to stop liking you. And so what this might look like is you agree when you really don't. You enable versus evaluate. You soften your feedback to avoid tension or accountability, or you let the session go off track and let them complain and commiserate with them so that they like you and they think you're nice. And the reason this happens is because you fear rejection and conflict. You want to be liked. You want to be nice. You want to protect yourself, but you end up sacrificing depth, honesty, accountability, and transformation for your client out of your own fear. And again, I knew that this would be a little harsh, but this is something that I learned as a therapist over a decade ago, and it's something I carry into my coaching. And it's so important because, as you can see, even though these are sticky and subconscious and subtle, clients feel them and they can be harmful to the coaching process because it distorts the coaching process. Clients are no longer being coached from their experience, but from yours. It undermines their autonomy, because projection can cause coaches to direct instead of empower, because again, they're using that interaction to heal something within themselves. It erodes safety and trust because even though the client might not be able to say it, they'll feel something is off, even if they can't name it. And the third thing is it leads to misattunement because now the coach is coach-centered versus client-centered, and the client won't feel fully seen, heard, or supported in a way that feels personalized. Now, I don't want you to be beating yourself up and harshly criticizing yourself or scared to do another coaching session if any of this is landing or resonating with you. This happens to everyone because we are humans with brains. I am guilty of this as well, especially when I am not actively doing what I'm about to share with you. So, here are 4 things you can do to manage projections. They will happen, but here's what you can do to buffer against them and manage them. Number 1 is increase your self-awareness. We talked about this before, but it's actually your responsibility to proactively do this and know and reflect ahead of time. What are your triggers? What are your opinions? What are your values? What are your beliefs? Do you have any prejudices? Are there any biases that would come up working with someone? And do the work ahead of time through self-coaching, coaching with someone else, therapy, whatever works for you. Personally, any day that I am client-facing and I'm going to interact with someone, I do this in the morning. I self-coach. I acknowledge where I'm at. I think about the client, and if anything comes up, I work through it ahead of time. That way, when I'm client-facing, I am ready to serve them versus serve myself. I've already worked through my agenda. I don't need to use the session to do it. Number 2 is use supervision or peer consultation. So talk through client cases and check for any projection, countertransference, over-identification. Again, this was something I took from my background as a therapist, and I find ways to implement in my coaching business, and I think it's the reason I'm able to work with clients deeply but effectively because I'm not misusing that time or space. And the third thing is to slow down and get curious. If something feels off, okay, ask yourself, is this about them or about me? And again, do self-coaching, work with another coach, talk to a therapist, have some type of peer supervision or peer coaching where you're bringing cases to increase your skill and awareness. And if it does feel off, tip number 4 is return to the client's agenda. Stay anchored in their language. Stay focused on their goals. Really pay attention to their experience of the problem and take notes so that you can stay in their model of the world, not yours. And if anything else landed today, I know there was a lot in here. That is the one piece I want you to take with you. Stay focused on the client's agenda, not yours. Because remember, coaching is a relational practice and you are a part of that change for the client, right? But it is a skill set and we are helping the client get to their next stage, not ours. And this is a practice that you can learn and hone over time as you gather new information, implement it, and improve over time. The cleaner you are internally and the better your skill set is and the more support you have, the better you'll be able to serve your clients. So that's what I have for you today, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love for you to leave a review and share this link on social media or with your coaching community. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that you never miss another episode or training designed to help you master the art and skill of coaching. Thanks for tuning in and your support. I'll see you guys next week.